Hello, thank you for joining Above Replacement Radio, everybody. We talked about some of the managerial hirings that went on in the league with Craig Counsell going to the Cubs and whatnot. And we also talked about our biggest hits and misses from the players to watch before the season started.
We also went through our predictions for the BBWAA awards and went through some of our custom awards for the 2023 season.
Let's get into it.
Baseball isn't just numbers.
This game is not being played on computers.
You don't do that with a bunch of statistical gimmicks.
You don't put a team together with a computer.
We're talking
weighted runs created plus,
expected WOBA,
his sweet spot rate,
defensive runs above average,
average exit velocity,
barrel rate,
xFIP,
BABIP,
SIERA.
We are Above Replacement Radio. And welcome to Above Replacement Radio. We're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Giant. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing well today. It is the first official episode of the off season, and we knew that it was going to be one with high expectations. We have Shohei Ohtani's free agency. We have Yoshinobu Yamamoto coming over from Japan. We have possibly a Juan Soto trade. We have the best first-year Hall of Fame class in ARR history. But what we didn't know we were going to have was manager free agency. And that's what we got this week with Craig Counsell. And out of everything that's actually happened in this week, that's probably the most notable thing that we've seen. Craig Counsell going to the Cubs.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely one of the more just respected managers out there in the game right now. Has been leading the Brewers for quite a while.
9 years.
8 years, you said?
9 years.
9 years. 9 years with the Brewers. A fairly successful run, especially for a team that's not really a big budget team, and relies a lot on, just logically doing the right things and whatnot. And yeah, his contract ended with the Brewers. No extension there, no re-signing there, and goes to maybe the Brewers' biggest competitor for the division next year.
Yeah, I think it's very possible that that's that. Not only that, but a team that the Brewers have had, quite a rivalry with for a while. Milwaukee and Chicago are only an hour apart from each other by drive. So there's a lot of Cubs fans that go to Milwaukee, a lot of Brewers fans that go to Wrigley when the two play each other. And there was also, in the middle of Counsell's tenure with the Brewers, that 2018 race with the Cubs that came down to a game 163 for the division. This is, it was definitely a very surprising move for Counsell to have made. The consensus was that it was going to be either the Brewers or Mets when he signed, and we got like a mystery team sort of vibe from everyone. And the Cubs gave him a 5-year contract where he'll be making $40 million, so $8 million a year, and that would make him the highest paid manager in baseball history.
Yeah, absolutely. Good for him, getting that bread as they call it. But yeah, it's an interesting opportunity, and it kind of makes sense why he is kind of more enthusiastic to get into this role. I know that, financial reasons, there's definitely that. And also it's not much of a move. Obviously it's it's an hour drive from Milwaukee, as you mentioned. And along with that, Cubs are coming off a year where, they disappointed at the end. However, they did kind of exceed expectations. They were probably expected to be more like a 75, 80 win team. They win 83 games. They almost make the playoffs. And not only that, they have like a consensus like top 5 farm system in baseball right now. They have some guys coming up. They have some young talent. They have some guys who are in their prime, like Dansby Swanson and Justin Steele, who are hitting their prime and really making this team good. So I think Craig Counsell knows what he's getting into with the Cubs and likes what he's getting into here.
Yeah. This was very much a surprising move. I think it's very indicative of what the Cubs expect to do this offseason, but maybe also what Counsell expects the Brewers to do this offseason. The Brewers have already been pretty active. They traded Mark Canha to the Detroit Tigers. I think it was like on November 4th, which maybe that says that they're I don't want to say punting on next year, but I mean, it's probably the last of their championship window. It looks like they're absolutely not re-signing Corbin Burns after next year. Brandon Woodruff is a free agent after next year, and he already, unfortunately, will be undergoing Tommy John surgery, so you won't have him for his contract year. And that's it. That's the biggest strength of the team right there is a starting rotation. So they're going to be, uh, without those two after 2024. And there are some, big decisions to be made in the front office about how do we approach this season? Do we, the rest of the division is kind of upcoming. The Cubs and Reds look better. The Cardinals could come back at any moment. The Pirates should be better, hopefully. To lose Craig Counsell in the beginning of that definitely isn't a good sign for Milwaukee.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, with Milwaukee, they're an interesting ball club. They've succeeded. They've had a lot of regular season success. They haven't, gone beyond the National League Division Series or even the National League Wild Card Series, I believe, since 2018, if I'm not mistaken. And they always seem to have enough to get there, but not really compete in the playoffs. And they've never really gotten beyond that edge, and that's not really to the fault of Craig Counsell. I think it's part of the reasoning of that is the organization never really fully commits on the team, whereas the Cubs they would commit. Part of it has to do with ownership and whatnot, with the Brewers are a little bit more timid to commit to something like that, whereas the Cubs, they'll go out, they'll spend 9 figures on a guy. The Brewers haven't really done that outside of extending Christian Yelich on what was a pretty team-friendly deal at the time. So yeah, and I understand why Counsell would want to go to the Cubs in that respect, because he's going to an ownership group that's a lot more willing to, add the pieces to help him win a championship, which is ultimately what you want to do as a manager.
Yeah, since 2019, the Brewers are 1-8 in the playoffs, which is pretty brutal. And maybe that says more about Counsell. Maybe it says something about the organization, the players, whatever. But I don't know if you saw this, but Mark Atanasio, the owner of the Milwaukee Brewers, had a quote after Counsell left saying, like, as I've reflected on this, I don't think we lost Craig. I think Craig lost our community or something like that. It was something to those lines. Mark Atanasio in the last year threatened to relocate to Milwaukee if taxpayers don't fund a new stadium. So it's very disingenuous to be talking about, losing the community or someone else losing the community as someone who has threatened to leave the community intentionally as a bargaining chip for other cities to maybe take on a potential stadium deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I did not know about that quote. Yeah,
it was very cheap.
Yeah, owners can have some fun, interesting, cynical quotes out there sometimes. So very funny to see that. And yeah, I think, yeah, and going to Counsell's playoff record since 2019, we've, collectively when we watch these games, no one's ever like, oh, well, why did Counsell do this? Why did Counsell do that?
I was gonna say, pull up. And to be fair, the Brewers shouldn't have made the playoffs this year anyway. But pull up the lineup they put out for Game 2 of the 2020 Wild Card Series against the Dodgers.
Yeah,
and tell me that it's Craig Counsell's fault.
Yeah, exactly. Going back to just dissecting some of the losses that have happened with the Brewers in the postseason since 2019. Obviously the one against the Nationals. I mean, they had their best pitcher out there, Josh Hader, and unfortunately, kind of broke down there at the end. In 2020, they were 29-31 and they were facing the Dodgers, who
they had Jed Jerko hitting third.
Yeah, it was insane. You can't really put that on Craig Counsell.
Nottingham was starting for that team.
And then 2021, even that lineup was not very good. They had a rough offensive stretch leading up to that series, and I mean they scored
4 runs in 4 games, I think.
I think they scored, or
like that. Maybe it was 6.
4 runs in the first 3 games, and then they lost like 5-4 in the last one.
I believe they scored. Didn't they score one run in the first 3 games?
I think
I'm
Tellez
pretty
hit
sure
a
that was a
two-run
thing.
homer, and then they got
Oh,
shut
he had
out
a 2-run
twice.
homer, and then they got shut. Okay, so 2 runs. Yeah, because I know they're only like scoring moments in that series in the first 3 games was the Tellez home run in game 1.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
they lost
ultimately,
2-1. They won 2-1. They lost 3-0. Lost 3-0. Yeah, they scored 6 runs in the entire series.
yeah, they scored 6 runs in 4 games, and that couldn't really be blamed on lineup construction from Craig Counsell. It's just they didn't have the talent to, defeat the Braves pitching. And this past year, the team starting pitching did not perform like they had in the regular season. It was kind of disappointing there, and the team's pitching in general just wasn't performing like they were in the regular season. I don't think it was Counsell putting out the wrong pieces necessarily. So yeah, I think I don't think that postseason record is that indicative of what Craig Counsell is like as a manager.
I would agree.
Yeah. So it'll be definitely exciting to see what he does with the Cubs. I think the Cubs have grown just their analytical outlook. It seems like, with just learning more about Craig Breslow becoming the chief baseball officer of the Red Sox, we've learned a little bit more about the Cubs and their operations. And it seems like they got something interesting going on over there in Chicago. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Anything more on the Craig Counsell hiring?
Yeah, I mean, it was surprising. I feel bad for David Ross more than anything, honestly. I feel like we haven't even gotten to that aspect of it
Oh
because,
yeah,
yeah, man, that guy. I mean, hey, by the way, we hired like you didn't know we were hiring for like a replacement for you, but we just hired a replacement for you.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Obviously, there's probably not going to be much reporting for a while on how that was communicated, and I'm sure the stories might be different if they ever come out. But yeah, I mean, they just completely booted him. I kind of feel bad for everything that like he's meant to that franchise between, being like the respected veteran on the 2016 team and being universally beloved in the clubhouse and by the fans. Transitioning into a manager's role where our first thought was like, are the Cubs looking too much through the rose-colored glasses of 2016, or are they, do they truly believe in the operation that David Ross is going to run? And I don't think he was a bad manager. I think he can find a coaching job somewhere else at some point, but yeah, brutal way to kick him out the door.
Yeah, it does suck. It does suck for him, no doubt. You have to feel bad for him, because yeah, this was sort of unexpected. But yeah, it just happened that one of the best managerial candidates out there was out there, and the Cubs went for him. And yeah, I think this is a little bit more. I think, as you mentioned, it's a little bit indicative of the Cubs' potential in this offseason. They're probably going to add a little bit more, increase that payroll a little bit, because yeah, their time is kind of nearing. We saw the potential of it this past year, so yeah, we'll see how that goes. Maybe a little bit of a transitional, or a transition of power with the Ross to Counsell change. And yeah, probably David Ross will probably find another managerial job. It probably won't be that hard for him to find one.
Yeah, the other managerial hire that happened in the last few days was Stephen Vogt going to Cleveland. I love this. I think this is awesome. Stephen Vogt obviously is a very well respected, former major leaguer. I think it says something that a guy got hired within a year of being out of baseball. Like I don't know the last time that happened, like outside of like player managers.
Yeah, no, it like yeah,
You know,
I
you
can't
think
think
of
of
you
an
like
example in my
every time
lifetime.
like a former player gets hired, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. Like he's been out of the game a few years. Stephen Vogt retired in 2021 or 2022, excuse me. Yeah, I mean 1 year out of baseball, and he's back uh on a Cleveland team that underperformed last year, on a team that has potential certainly, but definitely needs the right guy to lead them. And Terry Francona, uh, God bless him, great manager. And I know that he had like some health issues as well. So it was time for him to pass the torch, and I think he's doing it with the right guy here.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I mean, the guy's still younger than 40 years old. And it seems like, just based off of what you see from him in the media, seems like kind of like a player's guy.
Yep.
Seems like he would be good in the clubhouse, kind of a positive person to have around, just based on what we see, the audience sees. And yeah, like, a culture that would go with the Guardians. And by the way, yeah, the Guardians are still one of the youngest teams in baseball. We talked about them, in 2022, and how they were the youngest team in baseball, like literally, with how many guys they had, like 25 and under. So having a younger guy out there who literally played in that year when they did go to the playoffs, in 2022, I think that adds another layer to, what the Guardians could potentially do here.
Yeah, now that was the next point I was gonna make, is that, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of youth in that clubhouse. Having a more youthful manager that kind of can relate to, playing today, that'll probably help. I also think the Guardians probably need a bit of a overhaul with their offensive philosophy. I mean, they hit, I think, the least amount of homers in the American League last year. They did strike out the least, which was good, but naturally, when there is kind of a trade-off of contact and power, and the Guardians kind of went all contact. And that's what they were in 2022 as well. But you're kind of relying on a lot of things to go your way, and that is what happened in 2022. And they weren't able to have the same fortunes this year. But I think Stephen Vogt is a guy that maybe will be bringing in some sort of new philosophy. I mean, he's a guy that played in. He's a guy that played in multiple organizations towards the end of his career. Like, he was with Oakland, he was with Atlanta, I believe, towards the end of his career there. Like, he's been, in a lot of clubhouses in this kind of new age analytical era. So he's a guy that obviously knows, like, what people look at today, and how he can put his team in the best possible spot.
Yeah. Like, I think there is a huge benefit to having a guy that's been in the clubhouse, and even just a player in a modern game. I mean, we've seen we've seen how managerial tenures can go when the guy's kind of out of the loop and has been out of the game for a while, and just comes back, like, specifically Tony La Russa we're talking about here. He was out of the game for 9 years, came back, and had a pretty unsuccessful managerial tenure. Where, yeah, I think having a guy that played in the modern game, along with, was just in the clubhouse in the modern game, I think that there's teams, more and more teams are doing it throughout time, and it makes a lot of sense why.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like Stephen Vogt. I'm very happy for him. I'm excited to see what he does to that operation there in Cleveland.
Right. And the last one that we're not going to dive too deep into it. There's not really much to go over there. Is the Mets hired their new manager after, Buck Showalter and the Mets mutually agreed to part ways. The Mets went out and got Carlos Mendoza, who was the Yankees bench coach, you mentioned before the show. Yeah, I don't really know too much about I don't really know too much about the situation. It just seems like, they probably went through an interview process. He seemed like the most qualified guy, and here they are.
Yeah, Carlos Mendoza is 49 years old. He just turned 49, actually. His birthday was on November 4th. He's a guy that played very briefly in Major League Baseball, which and obviously has coached a bunch. So the Mets managerial hires are always either weird, because, I mean, we talked about this pre-show, but, like, they've gone through a rotating carousel of managers in the post Terry Collins era, where it was Mickey Callaway for a few years, and then it was Carlos Beltran for a few days, and obviously the scandal happened, and he stepped down from his role, which turned into Luis Rojas, which then turned into Buck Showalter, and now is turning into Carlos Mendoza. So I don't know. I feel like it's very hard to evaluate a Mets managerial hire right now, because I'm sure we've had a different, like, a variety of takes in all of the different hires that they've done post Collins, and they've all ended the same way. So it'll be interesting to see what Mendoza can bring to a clubhouse that I think definitely needs a change of culture. I mean, there were so many stories that came out of that clubhouse last year, with whether it was like, Max Scherzer saying that like, they did analytics wrong, or Justin Verlander saying whatever, and Tommy Pham saying it was like one of the most like depressing clubhouses he had ever played in, or whatever he said. Something different needs to be going on there in the clubhouse, and I'm sure Carlos Mendoza, coming from another team that just had a down year, probably, hungry in his own way to pick things up and be better.
Yeah, it does seem like there is definitely a carousel with the Mets. But I will say with the Mets, I think part of that has to do with like their sort of inconsistent model that they've had over the past few years. They've been kind of a roller coaster ride since even like the early 2010s. They've been up, they've been down, they got back up in 2022 and then right back down in 2023, despite high expectations based on, who they signed, their payroll, and just the general talent that they had. So I think with this managerial hire, it wasn't Craig Counsell. However, the Mets got half of that big duo in Milwaukee with David Stearns as the general manager. And I think the goal with hiring David Stearns was building a more sustainable model. And we talked about it when he did get hired by the Mets, is building that consistent model where the Mets can maybe, have a good farm system while having a high payroll and a very talented MLB roster. And that can be a model for success because, David Stearns built that with the Brewers with $100 million less to spend, pretty much. The Mets are, we talked about the Brewers' lack of playoff success, and part of that had to do with lack of talent. The Mets are going to have that extra talent that the Brewers didn't have. So how that relates to the Carlos Mendoza hiring is, if the Mets general manager now, David Stearns, has that sustainable model, there's potential to make this a longer managerial tenure where, it's not, a boom and bust cycle with the Mets where they're hiring a manager every 3 years. So if David Stearns can build this sustainable success for the Mets, Mendoza might have a longer tenure than we expect here.
Yeah. I mean, there is obviously hope with a new, baseball operations department leader, and a guy that's been, like you said, proven to have built a winner, even without the funds. And Steve Cohen obviously has the funds. So it's interesting. I mean, like I said, I don't really want to put too many big judgments on this one because Mets managerial hires are so unpredictable. But we'll see what happens. I mean, it's a team that obviously needs, a big comeback next year to justify how much they've spent on that team financially. So we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, and managerial hirings and firings can be weird sometimes because sometimes the team isn't succeeding and it's not even because of the manager, but like there's sort of just an expectation that you fire the manager and whatnot. So, a lot of that has to do with things that, we as the fans can't really understand or grasp or, get to know necessarily. Anything more on the hiring before we get into awards?
No, let's talk about awards.
All right. Well, now
do we want to do hits and misses first, or do we want to do awards first?
So I want to, my goal here is to make this an all out award show with hits and misses included as part of that, because they're all winners here. Our biggest flop is technically winning something. So with we're making the we only had a bit of news to get into, so that's why we're titling the episodes the Above Replacement Radio Award Show. This is the producer note here. We're going to add some award show music, and I'm going to have a little bit of an intro here.
Did I get on a suit and tie or something?
I was thinking about it, but I didn't warn anybody ahead of time. So, we're just going to have it, and it's not worth whatever extra 2 views that we'd get on it through the thumbnail. So here we go. Producer note. Let's get this music going. Okay. It's time for the Above Replacement Radio Awards. Where do we stand on the BBWAA Awards? Who will take Chris's illustrious Short End Award? And who will have the humbling honor of winning Daniel's Mercy Award? All that and more in the Above Replacement Radio Awards. All right, thank you, producer, for adding.
Wow, what an intro!
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. So yeah, first and foremost, we will get into the hits and misses, and we'll start with the hits. We end with the misses because the misses are always funnier. Technically, we call them flops. Actually, the hits and flops. The flops are always funnier. And by the way, the hits and flops are representative of the players to watch that we had preseason. For those unaware, for all 30 teams, we pick a player to watch, usually under the radar, usually a guy that's not a top 5 player on the team. And we break down why we expect success from them or even improvement from them this season. And sometimes that's a bit of a risk, which is why we have a bunch of flops. But when they hit, it is truly something special. So yeah, we'll go however many hits we had, we'll just go with. I mentioned 5.
I put 5 of each.
Yeah, I put 5.
With a bunch of honorable mentions for the misses.
Yes. So I put 8 flops. Some were stronger than others. But I still had a better campaign here than my 2021 campaign, which was god awful. I had 8 flops there as well, but I had 4 pretty weak hits. But here we go.
Hit was a guy that never played after May, June.
Yeah, Byron Buxton. He played about 60 games, I think.
Yeah.
So what is your number 5 hit?
My number 5 hit is a guy that I kind of picked a little bit of a risky pick, a guy that had never played in the majors before this year. But I went with Brandon Pfaadt, who, on the surface did not have great numbers, but I'm looking at what he did for me recently. After getting sent down to the minors, he came back and had a 4.22 ERA and a 4.35 FIP in his 70 innings pitched throughout his last 13 starts, which, yes, isn't fantastic, but in the playoffs, he was a lot better. He had a 3.27 ERA in 22 innings pitched with a strikeout to walk ratio over 5. It was 26 strikeouts to 5 walks. I know that he didn't have a very good regular season of 5.72 ERA in his rookie campaign, but adjusting to major league hitting for the first time is tough, and he showed some pretty clear improvements down the stretch and looked very good in the postseason. He pitched very well, especially in that NLCS against the Phillies. And for that, he's my number 5 hit.
Yeah, that is he definitely established himself and got good in the spotlight when the spotlight shone on him. All right, and now for my number 5 hit. This was one of my more higher profile picks, so I can't take too much credit for his success here, and he improved a little bit, but not too dramatically. I'm talking about Ha-Sung Kim, who led Padres position players in Baseball Reference WAR this year. And it's Baseball Reference WAR, so it values defense a lot more. But even still, that's really impressive on a team with Xander Bogaerts, Fernando Tatis Jr., and Juan Soto. Ha-Sung Kim took the reign supreme in Baseball Reference wins above replacement. He also had 0.8 more Baseball Reference WAR than last year, 0.7 more FWAR than last year, and he also stole 26 more bases, which is pretty unbelievable. He really took advantage of the new rules. And yeah, he was, I described him as, a pretty underrated guy. Like, you wouldn't expect him to, have such a high ranking within the Padres, but here he was this year leading all Padres position players in BWAR. So yeah, that's my number 5 hit. What do you got for number 4?
So for my number 4 hit, I'm going with another guy with the same first name, actually. I'm going with Brandon Drury of the Angels. He had the highest OPS plus of any non-Trout Ohtani Angel throughout this year. I believe it was 118 or something like that. What was his? It was 114. 114 OPS plus. It was a bit of a down year from last year where he had a 123 OPS plus, but he was still a strong player in that Angels lineup. He had an 803 OPS. And a lot of what I talked about preseason with him was his batted ball profile, and he kind of did everything to improve that and also keep it the same. He improved his barrel rate from 10.4% last year to 11% this year. He actually increased his fly ball or his line drive rate very, very slightly. It went from 24 to 24.6, but he kept his batted ball profile the same. He barreled the ball up a little bit more. He had, overall very good batted ball metrics between like exit velocity and hard hit rate. And also did very well in the field. His fielding run value this year went from 54th percentile in 2022 to 82nd percentile this year. And he played, kind of a variety of positions for the Angels with, some injuries that they had. And the Angels were a team that there was a lot of potential for flops. So I'm very happy with how my Brandon Drury pick worked out.
Yeah, there is something like really, really special about picking a correct hit on a team that severely underperformed. And there's something extra. Yeah.
Another thing, he slugged 497 this year. Like that's, a borderline 500 slugging percentage for a full qualifying season is pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's definitely very impressive. And yeah, he performed like way above expectations in 2022, and he kind of kept that up. It seemed like he was due to regress, but he didn't really regress. So
only a slight bit.
And to add to the point of getting a hit on a team that severely underperforms, it's extremely embarrassing to get a flop on a team that really overperformed. And
there's plenty of those in mine.
Yeah,
flops.
We'll have some examples of that. For my number 4 hit, I am talking about Matt Vierling. I was pretty strong about him. He didn't, play like an all-star this year, but improvement is improvement, and he did improve significantly offensively. Matt Vierling, by the way, a center fielder for the Tigers. He was traded from the Phillies to the Tigers in the Gregory Soto trade, and his OPS improved 69 points. Nice. In 173 more plate appearances this year. So he got more playing time, and he just overall improved better offensively. He also had 2.1 more Baseball Reference wins above replacement than last year. He was more valuable by 2 wins than he was in 2022. And I highlighted him last year because I highlighted his bad luck last year. He had some of the worst luck on batted balls last year, and he was due to balance out, and it balanced out this year. He had pretty similar expected numbers, but his actual numbers went up, which is something that I expected to happen just based on the bad luck he had last year. So Matt Vierling is my number 4. What is your number 3?
Yeah, good trade by the Tigers there in the Gregory Soto trade, getting Matt Vierling as well as Nick Maton. My number 3 is another guy that is a bit of a more high-profile name, but he was a hit on a team that had a lot of misses, especially on offense. Talking about Gleyber Torres on the New York Yankees. Gleyber Torres was probably the only good pick there could have been in the Yankees offense. He was the only, regular everyday player that had an OPS plus over 100 outside of Aaron Judge, but obviously I'm not going to take Aaron Judge in this segment. He had a 118 OPS plus last year. He had an 800 OPS for the first time since 2019, which was, a big year for him. It was kind of his breakout year, but he never really got back to the same place, and he did that exactly this year. He also decreased his strikeout rate this year. It was 22% in 2022, and he got down to 14% this year. He upped his walk rate from 6.8% in 2022 to 10% in 2023. So he had a very strong season overall, and I mean he was first of all, he also led the Yankees in plate appearances, so he was there every day. 672 plate appearances over 158 games played. He was probably the most dependable guy in that lineup the entire year. And yeah, the only Yankees position players that had a 100 OPS plus this year were Judge, Gleyber Torres at 118, and then Jason Dominguez and Greg Allen, who combined for about 60 plate appearances. Right. So, on a team where I could have easily picked a flop, I'm very happy with how Gleyber Torres turned out, and I'm really interested to see if he can build off this and continue to build up the profile that he had for himself in 2019.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, people were very high on him. He came up as a top 5 prospect. Seemed like he was living out that potential early on, and then faded, and now it seems like he's getting back on track here. My number 3 hit is Justin Steele.
Great pick.
He improved and he was in the Cy Young conversation for most of the second half. Unfortunately, his performance dropped off in his last like 4 starts, and he's not going to be, he's not a finalist and definitely not going to be Cy Young, obviously. So with Justin Steele, he threw a lot more innings just in general, so that obviously boosts his profile a little bit more. He gets a little bit more respect for that. Didn't really have a long injury stint this year as opposed to last year where he did have that injury. So he threw 54 more innings, and his ERA plus also improved by 14 points. He went from 132 to 146, and Justin Steele was 6th among Major League Baseball qualifiers in ERA. He was 5th in FIP, and he will probably likely finish top 5 in the Cy Young, I would have to imagine. I know he isn't a finalist, but I would argue he should have been a finalist, but nonetheless, still a still a great season. And I declared him in. You agreed with this also when I picked him. He was going to be the best pitcher in this Cubs staff, despite Stroman and Tyon having their big deals and some other guys coming up. I thought he would have the best year, and that was correct. So Justin Steele is my number 3. What is your number 2?
If Justin Steele is your 3, then your hits are way better than mine. Mine is my number 2 is also maybe a little high profile. But I had a very specific thought on him, and it went perfect. William Contreras from the Milwaukee Brewers. One of the main things I talked about him preseason was how he was not even the best catcher that was involved in the trade that sent him over to Milwaukee. And a lot of people, I think, kind of just forgot about the fact that the Brewers really gave up nothing to get him. They gave up Esteury Ruiz, who did steal a lot of bases this year, but William Contreras was probably the best hitter in that Brewers lineup. He had the highest OPS plus at 126 of any hitter on the Brewers. He ended up hitting he had an 828 OPS overall, 291 batting average, and also dramatically improved defensively as a catcher, specifically with blocking and framing. This year, he had 93rd percentile framing among all catchers and 85th percentile blocking. Those were in the 20s in terms of percentile last year. So the Brewers dramatically improved him as a fielder. And he kept it going offensively overall, and he also upped his exit velocity by a mile an hour. His average exit velocity this year was 91.3 miles an hour, which is pretty awesome. He could, ideally he could hit the ball in the air a little bit more. He did only have a 20% fly ball rate this year, but my main narrative about him was he's going to be the best bat on the Brewers this year, and he was. So very happy with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think he led all catchers in F4. William Contreras did. So he had a pretty unbelievable year, and that is definitely a very good hit. My number 2, my number 1 and number 2 had technically worse seasons than my number 3, but they also had much lower expectations and were coming off.
Yeah, that's kind of what it's all about.
Yeah, so with my number 1 and 2, they just had like the most improvement and built a much better profile over the last year as opposed to 2022. So my number 2 is Jake Berger. Just basically he went from a role player who was probably a platoon bat against lefties to someone who's an everyday starter and someone you can rely upon and someone you're excited to have up for your team, whether it be for the White Sox or the Marlins. And he was my White Sox player to watch, obviously, as he was on the White Sox before the season started. His slugging improved by 60 points, and he also had 357 more plate appearances, 26 more home runs this year. He hit 34 home runs this year, which probably you would not have expected him to hit 30 home runs in 2023. Also, his baseball reference wins above replacement went from -0.1 to 2.5. His F-WAR went from 0.3 to 2.5. And Jake Berger was also top 15 in all of Major League Baseball in home runs, and he was 12th in slugging. So yeah, I mean, I didn't really expect him to make that big of an improvement. And be that reliable of a hitter. But yeah, he ended up doing that. So yeah, what is your best hit for
My best hit. I think Jake Berger was probably the best possible pick you could have made on the White Sox this year.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Even like they traded him mid-season, but like going through here, like the only guys that had a higher OPS plus than him as members of the White Sox, it was just Luis Robert Jr., but he's a little too high profile for this list. And the only other guys that were even above average were Andrew Vaughn at 1 and Eloy Jimenez at 104. And then in the pitching, it was, there wasn't really anything too exciting. But my number one hit was Nolan Jones of the Colorado Rockies. He had an excellent year overall, a 931 OPS, and also very even home road splits, which is probably the most important part about all of it. Because you see a guy doing well in the Rockies and you think, okay, Coors. I think he had a higher OPS on the road, very slightly, actually. And overall, a 135 weighted runs created plus put him 20th among all hitters with at least 400 plate appearances. It sucks that he couldn't get to 500 or even 600 plate appearances because of that one injury. Oh, wait, never mind. They put him in the minors for no reason. That's why he only had 400 plate appearances this year, because they had to have Mike Moustakas on that team. Nolan Jones had a really solid batted ball profile this year. The most important thing was his fly balls. He hit them very hard. His fly balls had an average hit distance of 344 feet. And the only hitters with a longer average hit distance on fly balls this year was Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani. And I understand that Coors was a large part of that. Like if you filter it by home and away, he did have a much longer average fly ball distance at home than on the road, but still, only being behind Judge and Ohtani in average hit distance on fly balls is pretty awesome. He had 93rd overall percentile batting run value. He had a barrel rate of 15.7% this year, which was 94th percentile. He walked a lot, which was excellent, and also his arm in the outfield is arguably the best in baseball. His average miles per hour in throwing is 98.9 miles an hour. That is 100th percentile. His arm value at 8 is 100th percentile. Nolan Jones actually looks like he can be a future piece of the Colorado Rockies. He was age 25 season this year. He was playing in his first full season, so they have him, I think, for another 5 years. And it's exciting for the Rockies, a team that did have a very rough season, the worst in franchise history. To look at Nolan Jones and say, all right, this is a piece we have for the future. Because through this rebuilding period, they haven't really been able to see that with a lot of young people, a lot of people that haven't been in the organization very long. But Nolan Jones absolutely has been that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Nolan Jones was by far the best Rockies player this year.
Maybe the best Nolan they've ever had.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes them forget about the other Nolan that they traded. Definitely not, but
definitely
fun idea.
Yeah, it's like just looking at on a team full of flops, this was definitely a hit. He was one of 2 above average hitters on this team. Charlie Blackmon was the other, and Nolan Jones had him in OPS plus by 31 points. And any pitcher who threw 80 innings or more, which there were 6 pitchers to do that on the Rockies, had an ERA over 4, and anyone above 100 innings had an ERA over 5. So yeah, not too many hits on this Rockies team. My number one hit, he was on a team that performed a little bit better than usual, but that's a lot because of his contributions. And I'm talking about Max Kepler, who after kind of a career downturn where it seemed like he just had one successful season, and literally was taken in the players who had that one season draft. He now has 2 seasons, so that's good for Max.
Because of those 2 seasons.
Yeah, he has 2 seasons now, because Max Kepler from 2022 to 2023, his slugging improved by 136 points. His OPS improved by 150 points. Also, one thing, there's a little bit of an element to success in the hits here when you mention a specific problem, and you say, if he if this recorrects, he's going to have more success. And his problem was bad luck on pulled batted balls, largely because of the shift. And he went from hitting 267 on pulled batted balls to 403. And he went from slugging 496 on pulled batted balls to 896. So he slugged 400 more points when he pulled the ball from 2022 to 2023. So yeah, Max Kepler, he's my number one hit. And
number one hit. You can check out a short of Chris's analysis on him on the ARR YouTube channel.
Yeah, there is a little bit of that. Like when time is invested to make like a edited video about it.
Yeah, it's like you can see it right here. I called it, and
I have like 13 clips of him hitting line drives right to the second baseman who's playing in short right field.
Yeah. All right, so, now for the moment we've all been waiting for.
Yes, now we get into congratulations to Max Kepler and Nolan Jones being our number one hits, but the more prestigious honors lie within our flops. I think we can start with like
you go ahead and start first. If you have 8.
Yeah. So, and how many honorable mentions do you have?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
So we could just drop those at the end.
That's 17 out of 30. 31 actually, because there was a team where I had 2.
So I'll say my first 2.
All right.
Then maybe you'll say 1, I'll do 2, and then we'll be kind of even in that respect. My number 8 flop is, we shared this flop here.
Oh, nice.
Maybe he's in your list, maybe he's in your honorable mention.
I know who you're talking about.
But he didn't have crazy high expectations coming in, so that's why he's a little bit lower on the list. But I'm talking about Kyle Stowers of the Baltimore Orioles. The team improved by 18 wins this year, but it was not because of Kyle Stowers, who in his 33 plate appearances that he was given with the Orioles this year, he hit .067 with a .218 OPS and negative -35 OPS plus. I was really high on just his quality of contact. He hit a lot of batted balls in the sweet spot zone. He had a high exit velocity. His expected batting average on contact was crazy, but unfortunately, it was not able to translate to success this year. My number 7 flop was Jake McCarthy. Again, a team that improved and eventually went to the World Series, but that was not because of Jake McCarthy, who I had high hopes for coming out of the outfield. Good defensive player, good base runner, and was able to get on base at a good rate too. His OPS dropped by 125 points. His OPS plus dropped 40 points. His average dropped 40 points, and his slugging dropped 101 points. So he, dramatically regressed, even as a guy who's in his mid to early 20s. So yeah, unfortunate there. What is your number 5 flop?
Yeah, so I also so Kyle Stowers was in my honorable mentions. I didn't put him on my list. And before I get into this, I will just say a lot of my logic is I believe Kyle Stowers suffered some injuries this year, as well as the not getting a lot of playing time being in the minors. So I tried to prioritize guys that played for at least most of the year, whether it be in the minors or the majors, and stayed away from guys that got hurt, because I did have a lot of those. But my number 5 is Josh H. Smith. And you might be wondering, wait, who is Josh H. Smith? Is that a guy that plays for like some random team that had a lot of flops? No, he played for the World Series champion Texas Rangers that had a million breakouts this year. And Josh H. Smith, unfortunately, was not one of them. He had a 632 OPS this year. And a lot of what I talked about with him preseason was he had a lot of fly balls that were hit hard that just didn't find their way out. I believe he hit like below 100 on fly balls and slugged like also like close to below 100. He had some of the worst stats on fly balls last year, despite having a good exit velocity on his fly balls. And unfortunately, he just had a lot of balls to the warning track that I figured would translate into some home runs this year. It didn't. There was still a near 200-point difference between his slugging and X-slug on fly balls this year. But a lot of that is because 40% of his fly balls went to center field, which is increased from last year. And it's harder to hit home runs to center field than it is to left and right. He had a 648 difference between slugging and X-slugging on barrels, which was the ninth unluckiest among the 329 hitters with at least 10 barrels. So a lot of this, unfortunately, is just that, his bad luck kind of continued, which is why I put him at number 5 instead of further down the list with how many potential hits there could have been on the Texas Rangers. So Josh H. Smith for me is number 5.
Yeah, that is yeah, it's always unfortunate when you have a team full of breakouts, but you don't pick the right one. My number 6 flop, this one I have lower on the list because he wasn't my original player to watch. I had an original player to watch, and then like 2 days before the episode was being recorded, the guy had an injury for 4 months that was going to take him out for 4 months, so I couldn't really put him as a player to watch. So this was my secondary option, and my secondary option was Daniel Bard of the Colorado Rockies. His ERA more than doubled from last year. His ERA plus dropped 149 points, and his FIP also more than doubled. I was very complimentary of what he was able to do in his age, I believe it was age 37 or 38 season. But unfortunately, regressed, and hopefully he can get back to what he was in 2022, but had a rough season last year. And then
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you were going to pick Brendan Rodgers, right?
I was going to pick Sean Bouchard.
Sean Bouchard, that's who it was.
Because he had
sucks. He actually did well this year in like 7 plate appearances.
Yeah, and he did well last year.
Yeah.
Last year he had a 954 OPS in however many games he played.
Yeah, he had 1056 OPS in 21 games.
Yeah, this year, and then last year was
he has a 991 career OPS in 48 games and 140 plate appearances.
So maybe that's my 2024 Rockies player to watch.
Yeah, you were better off going with him.
I was better off.
Despite the injury, it's like, yeah, you know what? He'll come back in September.
Yeah, watch out for this guy when the Rockies
are already 27 games out of the division.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, check out Sean Bouchard when they trail the Dodgers by 33 games in the division. Yeah. So yeah, I would have been better off. And my number 5 pick, unfortunate here, and NECBL alum Derek Hall, who I was optimistic about because of what he was able to do when he hit the ball. But his quality of contact went down tremendously, along with the fact that he strikes out over 30% of the time. Derek Hall hit 167 with a 437 OPS and 20 OPS plus in 56 plate appearances. His OPS plus dropped 102 points from last year to this year. That means, he was 102% worse as a hitter. And along with that, his barrel rate, I've talked about his barrel rate and how great that was. It went from 17% last year to 3% this year. And I mentioned, his numbers on contact, his expected WOBA on contact also dropped 112 points from last year to this year. So quality of contact went down, and therefore his performance also went down tremendously. And yeah, was not really involved in the Phillies season at all. And, not in the playoff roster, obviously. And yeah, just not really a significant part of the Phillies. What is your number 4 pick?
I'm doing a span finder on Sean Bouchard for like first 48 games of a career. I need to see something.
Something, yeah. We will.
My number 4 pick, I thought about just leaving this one off because it's so unfair, but my number 4 miss was Shea Langoliers. Picking an A's player was the trap. Like we should have just bypassed the entire team.
Yeah.
Like, do not watch anyone on this team, please. I mean, like there were a couple potential hits, like Ryan Noda, Zach Geloff, Brent Rooker, in the offense particularly. But yeah, I don't know. This team just, it was unfortunate, but Shea Langoliers in particular, he had a 605 OPS at the Oakland Coliseum this year. He actually had pretty lopsided home road splits, was like an average hitter on the road, and very poor at home. And I kind of get it, unfortunately. But His sweet spot percent dropped 12 points this year. It went from 42.9% in a very small sample to 30.8%. His expected batting average was 7th percentile. His expected WOBA, sweet spot rate, chase rate, whiff rate, strikeout rate, and walk rate were all around the bottom 30 percentile as well. And he also, sorry. He had a 14% home run to fly ball ratio at home and a 28.3% home run to fly ball ratio on the road. I feel like there's still a lot of potential for him when he plays outside of Oakland. But it also doesn't help that the guy that he was, the centerpiece of a trade for hit 54 home runs this year. So that's a lot of why I put him number 4. Because
Yeah.
I do still think there was a lot of potential with Shea Langoliers. But this year was not it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. My number 4 flop comes from Queens. I was talking about before this season, Brett Beatty, corner infielder for the Mets. He had great minor league numbers last year. I think led all of the Eastern League or led the minors in some respect in weighted runs created plus last year, and had some good underlying numbers when he was at the MLB level in 2022, but his full rookie season was not very good. Brett Beatty hit 212 with a 598 OPS and a 65 OPS plus in 389 plate appearances. I was optimistic about Brett Beatty, but he was below replacement this year. So yeah, I mean, unfortunate there, and hopefully he'll be able to turn it around. I think he's still early 20s guy, so hopefully there's a turnaround there. But this year he is my number 4 flop. What is your number 3?
My number 3 flop was a pitcher from the north side of Chicago, Hayden Wesneski. He was one of the first guys that I put as a player to watch for 2023. He pitched 33 innings in 2022. Looked really good, had a 193 ERA plus, had some very good batted ball metrics, and it just did not continue this year at all, unfortunately. He's most known for his 12.3% barrel rate against this year, which was 1st percentile, the very low. His 4.63 ERA this year in 89 innings pitched was actually pretty good compared to all his peripherals. He had a 5.27 expected ERA and a 5.48 FIP. So, his home runs per 9 went from 0.8 to 2. It more than doubled. His walk rate went from his walks per 9 went from 1.9% or 1.9 to 3.2. He struck out a little bit less batters. Ultimately, he just, did not perform the same way. And interestingly enough, his sweeper, which is his primary pitch, was pretty good. But all 3 of his fastballs, his 4-seamer, his cutter, and his sinker, which had 175 batted balls against combined for a 307 average against and a 608 slugging against. So everyone beat up on his fastballs this year. And his line drive rate overall also went from 13.5% to 26.2%. I really was hoping that Wesneski was going to develop further in the Cubs system. He was the guy that they got in the Scott Efros trade, but that did not happen at all. So he's my number 3 miss.
And yeah, obviously now we are on to the podium of the flops, and my number 3 flop comes from the Houston Astros. It's kind of hard. I will say, I'll preface this maybe a little bit of a defense mechanism here, but when you have such a talented team like the Astros, it's hard to find under the radar guys. But I could have chosen a lot better than David Hensley, who was a utility player for the Astros, and did not really provide anything for them this year. He hit 119 with a 379 OPS and an 8 OPS plus this season in 94 plate appearances. And also his strikeout rate went up 19.6 percentage points. He struck out 37% of the time this year. I was high on him last year because he had an OPS over 1,000. And then this year, his OPS was below 400. So quite the turnaround there, unfortunately. And was not a reason for the Astros' success. obviously not on the playoff roster or anything. So David Hensley is my number 3 flop. What do you got for number 2?
My number 2, the good thing for Hayden Wesneski that he can, be happy about is that he was not my worst Chicago pitcher pick this year, because Michael Kopech really disappointed me this year. A lot of what I was thinking was like, well, he just kind of locates bad. It can't be that hard to fix, right? And I didn't mean it that literally. Like, I understand it is difficult to fix, but it wasn't fixed. He had a 646 FIP this year, and led the American League in walks with 91. 52% of his 1,400 four-seamers that he threw this year were outside the zone. That is the 10th highest rate, among the 397 seasons in the StatCast era with at least 1,000 four-seamers thrown. So Michael Kopech, just couldn't find the zone with his four-seamer this year, and it was still his number 1 pitch by quite a lot. Additionally, 18.9% of his batted balls were hard-hit fly balls. And naturally, when you throw a four-seamer that often, you're not going to get a lot of ground balls because the entire point of a four-seamer is that it rises and that, hitters are meant to get below it. So naturally, you're going to give up a lot of fly balls. Unfortunately, he was giving up a hard hit fly balls. Guys were hitting the barrel quite a bit on it. Because of this, he gave up a lot of home runs. He walked a lot of guys, obviously. His strikeouts were fine, but, not where you wanted them to be. They were just barely over, 1 per inning. So, I mean, you combine the walks with a lot of hard contact, and that's kind of what you got. Michael Kopech, a 5.43 ERA, a 5.81 expected ERA.
Yes, for sure. My number 2 flop that I put here, and I'm realizing I think I forgot a guy to put, because I literally just remembered somebody. I'll give him a shout out at the end. But and he's probably above some of these guys I mentioned, but I'll talk about him later. But my number 2 flop, we both missed on the World Series champion Texas Rangers, and my miss I'm a little bit more disappointed with, because he was a little bit of a layup, because he, like, just on the surface stats were extremely good last year. I'm talking about Brock Burke, who his ERA was below 2 last year in 82 innings pitched. And then this year, his ERA more than doubled. His ERA plus dropped 100 points. He was 100% worse at preventing runs this year. And he threw 22 2/3 less innings than he did last year. And, he did make the playoff roster, but he only threw 2/3 of a playoff inning combined, because he had 2 playoff appearances and combined for 2/3 of an inning. So, yeah, he was, after really, like, looking like he was going to be the staple of the Texas Rangers bullpen, he was not a part of their playoff run really at all in any positive way. And that's because, he wasn't put in those roles because he did not succeed in the regular season either, as he had a 4.37 ERA. So, yeah, Brock Burke is my number 2 flop. What is the worst flop of the year for Daniel Curran?
Yeah, the worst pick that I made this year was Luis Ortiz from the Pittsburgh Pirates. I was really banking on him making some sort of forward progress in that rotation this year, and it didn't even really come close to happening. So I think the biggest concern that I'll just start off with is that he threw 16 innings, I believe, last year, and that was kind of what I was going off of, because he looked really good in those innings. But his pitch velocity on both his four-seamer and his sinker went down by about 2 to 3 miles an hour this year. His sinker went from being 98.4 miles per hour in 2022 to 95.8 in 2023, and his four-seamer went from 98.4 to 96.2. So, he wasn't throwing the ball as hard, which is definitely concerning for a guy that was in his age 24 season. But on top of all that, most notably, he had an average exit velocity against of 92.4, which was first percentile this year. His hard hit rate was also first percentile at 49.1%. And by the way, this is on 291 batted balls, so that is essentially a full season. He threw a total of 86.2 innings this year, but it's 400 proportional to the mean. But he also had a 300 expected batting average against, a 528 expected slugging against, a 391 expected WOBA against a 690 expected ERA. His ERA was nicely 478, but his expected ERA was 690, which was also first percentile. And his strikeout rate also went from 24.6% in the few innings he pitched last year to 14.8% this year. His walk rate was 12%, so he was just barely striking out more guys than he was walking. And he also, he got sent down to the minors at some points. He came back up at various points and it never really looked like he was fit for that rotation. And I hope he can get that velocity back. I don't know if he was dealing with something with an injury or whatever, but Luis Ortiz was my number one flop for sure this year.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to pick Pirates players here. Can be difficult. So yeah, for some reason I forgot a certain guy, and I'm gonna make like a co-champion for my best for my worst flops, because one of them was a real shot in the dark and the other I was fairly comfortable with heading into the season. So the one I took the shot in the dark with was Anthony Miezowitz, and he was a left-handed reliever. He was dropped by the Royals and he was signed by the Cardinals, and he never actually ended up pitching for the Cardinals this year. He pitched with 3 MLB teams, but none of them were the team that I picked him as a player to watch for. He pitched with the Diamondbacks, with the Tigers, and the Yankees, but he did not pitch with the Cardinals, even though I picked him as my Cardinals player.
The Harold Ramirez treatment.
Yes, indeed. But this one made a lot more sense because he was not good. He had a 7.36 ERA this year in 11 innings pitched. I mentioned how I kept my eye on him with the Royals because he had a significantly higher strikeout rate with the Royals, and he had a 30% strikeout rate with the Royals. But this year, his strikeout rate was 14.5%. Really bad. I mentioned how in his Royal stint, his fastball velocity went from 92.5 miles per hour to 94.3 miles per hour. And this year, his four-seam fastball velocity was down to 93, which was 1.3 miles per hour less than it was with the Royals last year. So I was taking a shot in the dark. I thought maybe the Cardinals are doing something here, but they were not. They got rid of him, and he played for 3 other MLB teams and did not do well with any one of them. So he is the co-champion, and the other
one you forgot.
That was the one I forgot, yeah.
Okay,
and the other enough. Co-champion that I had listed is Rowdy Tellez. Also a video about him in our YouTube Shorts feed. We've got Max Kepler, Nolan Jones, and also Rowdy Tellez, and Brock Burke, by the way, too. So it was a hit or miss there as well. But with Rowdy Tellez, his slugging dropped 85 points, his OPS dropped 100 points, and after being maybe the most effective hitter on the Brewers last year, he was completely left off the Brewers playoff roster this year, and we don't really know what his future is with Milwaukee right now because his performance dropped dramatically. And I was very high on him coming into this season because he was one of the players that he really had a tough time against the shift, really bad numbers on pulled ground balls and straightaway ground balls, and just generally pulled and straightaway batted balls. Shout out to Foolish Bailey. He also flopped on this one. He was in his 5 hitters that he liked heading into 2023. So yeah, 2 thumbs down from me as well on Rowdy Tellez. So yeah, those are our hits and flops of the year. With players to watch. Which one do we want to close on? Do we want to close on the custom awards or the BBWA?
Let's close on the custom awards and do the BBWA awards now.
Yes, I agree with that, because also just the conversation about the BBWA awards this year is pretty bland.
It's so lame. There's one that I feel like sort of passionate about.
Yeah, because just to prepare for this episode, I listened back to our episode last year around this time about the BBWAA awards, and there was a lot more to talk about. You had Spencer Strider versus Michael Harris in the National League Rookie of the Year. You had like Quan Rutschman and Julio Rodriguez in the AL Rookie of the Year. You had the classic, Ohtani Judge thing of talking about which one was more valuable. And, Paul Goldschmidt had some competition in the NL MVP. Whereas this year, it seems like most of these awards are going to be taken away very, very handily. And yeah, we'll start with American League Rookie of the Year, where this one is fairly obvious.
Yeah, I mean, most of them are fairly obvious, but yeah, I don't even have any numbers on them, but it's Gunnar Henderson and Corbin Carroll. They're both. Corbin Carroll's going to win it unanimously. I didn't even think about who would be the 2 and 3, and it was Senga and James Outman.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Good for them.
I
wonder if you know what sucks too? Like, I don't know. I mean, Outman already debuted last year, right? I think Senga's probably going to get second over Carroll, which means that in the NL we don't even have the cool service time rule with the Rookie of the Year award, because both of them are already on specific contracts anyway.
Yeah, that does suck.
So that's unfortunate. And yeah, I don't know. As far as I don't think it even works either for Casas or Henderson, or it might work for Bybee actually if he gets top 2.
Right. Because
he came up because you get you get a full year of service time if you finish top 2 in the Rookie of the Year voting, and both Henderson and Casas started out the year anyway. They have a full year.
True.
Bybee did not, so Bybee would get that. So I guess it'd be cool if he got second.
Yeah, that is true. The only guy that's benefited from that, I think, is Adley Rutschman, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Only Adley Rutschman. So yeah, AL Rookie of the Year. We'll have our picks. And also who we think will win, and a lot of the time it's the same guy. And it's for us too. It's Gunnar Henderson and Corbin Carroll. We think they should win, and we think they're going to win. With Gunnar Henderson, he led all American League rookies in wins above replacement, home runs, runs scored, runs batted in, and offensive runs above average. With Corbin Carroll, he led all National League rookies in wins above replacement, home runs, stolen bases, runs scored, and offensive runs above average. Corbin Carroll had like a generational rookie season. Like, this was a fantastic one. He's probably going to be top 5 in National League MVP. Definitely top 10, no doubt about it, top 10. And yeah, I mean, he was, through June, he was a candidate to potentially win MVP. So yeah, like, he was an amazing player. With Gunnar Henderson, not a lot of competition around him. Tristan Casas, he had great offense, but his defense was pretty atrocious, especially, even as a first baseman, it was really, really bad. And Tanner Bybee, he had a really good year. Just didn't really have the innings or quite the excellence that would put him over Gunnar Henderson. He trailed by him in wins above replacement by at least 1 on both websites. So, you go with the everyday player. Gunnar Henderson had, very good offense, very good defense, very good base running, just an overall good season from him. And yeah, that's why the Rookie of the Year is pretty obvious for both leagues. So anything more before we move on to our least favorite award?
No, let's do it. Let's talk about Manager of the Year, baby.
Oh boy. I mean, this is so meaningful. Like,
it's going to be very funny. Like, I think people don't realize that these awards are voted on before the season, or before the start of the postseason. There's so many people being like, well, it's obviously Bochy. Like, what? And it's like, wait till they see that Brandon Hyde wins it with like 20 votes for first place.
Yeah. And I don't know. I've been surprised at many Manager of the Year results. So
that is true.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Bochy take it. However, putting into perspective, like, what the atmosphere was like on October 2nd, when I think these awards are voted on, which,
the Rangers had just lost the division.
Yeah, the Rangers had a division lead for a lot of the season, and it went away. Meanwhile, the Orioles won the best division in baseball.
Yeah, the best of May. Like people were saying, the best division ever.
Yeah, best division like in baseball history, or at least in the in the wild card era when they've had these types of divisions. So, and Brendan Hyde's team, won 11 more games. However, also the Rangers had a 22 game win improvement from 2022 to 2023, whereas the Orioles only had 18. But that's there's a lot of things that go into this. But is your pick also Brandon Hyde?
Yeah.
So yeah, my pick is Brandon Hyde, and
who's the other finalist? It's Hyde, it's Bochy, and who's the other one?
Kevin Cash.
Oh yeah.
Kevin Cash actually he has a decent case, but
he does have actually a fair case.
The discussion will be Brandon Hyde versus.
I think there's a fair case to be made for Kevin Cash over Bruce Bochy.
I think there is too. However,
I know that Bochy, destroyed both of them in the playoffs, but
it's a regular season award.
Exactly.
So
Kevin Cash lost his entire pitching staff and still won 99 games.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not to discredit Bruce Bochy. Like the Rangers absolutely outperformed this season, but yeah, no, those are actually our three strong candidates. It'd be very funny if Kevin Cash wins it for a third time.
It would be funny.
Unheard of territory for such a short span of time.
And then him and Bob Melvin can have 3 managers of the year and no World Series, each of them. So I think
Showalter too.
Oh right, yeah, that's true. He hasn't
Except his were like 20 years apart. He won one with the Yankees, one with the Rangers, and one with the Orioles.
Yeah.
I think it was in 1994, like 2000. I think it might have been 2004 with the Rangers, and then 2014 with the Orioles.
Yeah, and then 2021 with the 2022 with the Mets.
Oh yeah, so he has 4. Oh my gosh, you're right.
Yeah.
Do you think I remember who won Manager of the Year last year? No
yeah,
shot.
It's like
no
knowing
shot.
the RBI leaders.
Yeah, it was Buck Showalter and I think Tito, right?
Yeah, Tito won it.
Yeah, good for him.
So, and I thought Brandon Hyde should have won it last year, and the debate this year is going to be Brandon Hyde versus Bruce Bochy, most likely, even though Kevin Cash should get a little bit more consideration, but it's probably going to be Bochy versus Hyde because both of them came in with low expectations this year and they exceeded them. So with Brandon Hyde, we have to remember his opening day starter was Kyle Gibson. That's what he went in with. That's what the Orioles went in with as an organization coming into this year. A lot of them had them last place, and if they didn't have them last place, they had them 4th place and out of the playoffs. We talked about how the Orioles didn't really take any steps forward organizationally in the past offseason in making the team better. And despite that, the Orioles won 101 games this year. They won 18 more than last year. And that was with a $75 million payroll. So whereas the Rangers, they won 22 more games than last year, but the Rangers' improvement can largely be attributed to big front office moves. Even though, Jacob deGrom, he only made 6 starts this year. There were still some additions like Nathan Eovaldi, Andrew Heaney, as well as, some additions from last year that carried over with Corey Seager and Marcus Semien. And, that was a $250 million team the Rangers were. And yeah, I think Hyde had to do more maneuvering with the roster that he had than Bochy did. Bochy was probably a little bit more plug and play, which is easier to do when you have such talented players like the Rangers do. Whereas Hyde, I think, had to mix and match his lineup a lot more, mix and match his bullpen a lot more, and ultimately do that as well as Kevin Cash did. So yeah, that's why we have Brandon Hyde. I think they'll go with Brandon Hyde, but I wouldn't be surprised.
I do too.
I can't get surprised at anything with managers.
I don't know. I feel like they'll just hop on the Bochy train because he's Bruce Bochy.
Yeah.
A lot of people were like, he came out of retirement and he took this team that had 68 wins last year, and that's probably gonna be a lot of it is because the Rangers were the worst team the previous year out of the 3.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he brought them to the playoffs, and they almost won. Like they could give it to Bochy. I wouldn't agree
Yeah.
with it, but I also like, who cares? Manager of the year.
Yeah. I don't know. I just watching the Rangers, it was their players doing well because they were good and not because they were like put in the right situation. It that's what it felt like. Like they scored a crazy amount of runs. It's because they have good hitters. It's not necessarily because of amazing like lineup construction or whatever can be attributed to a manager. This award is so stupid. We should emphasize that we don't really know who is the best manager this year. Let's get that straight.
NL
So
Manager of the Year.
NL Manager of the Year.
I thought you were about to move on to Cy Young.
Oh yeah. National League.
You know what we're rooting for.
What are we rooting for?
We're rooting for Craig Counsell to win it.
Oh yeah, the classic
The classic team can't post about it.
Yes.
It's very funny. If you look at MLB's post about like the managers, they tagged the Braves and the Marlins, but not the Brewers.
Yeah.
The Brewers did not post about it. They posted about one of their guys that homered in the Arizona Fall League.
Yeah. Oh, he's in the organization.
Yeah, exactly. I think on the same day too.
So with these finalists, it's Craig Counsell, Brian Snitker of the Braves, and Skip Schumacher, who I think Schumacher will win it. If I had to guess, just based on the fact that they went from 69 wins to 84 wins, a fourth place team to a playoff team. And good, he's a first year manager as well. I think he'll win it. Who do you think is going to win this one?
I think Skip Schumacher is going to win it. I mean, I think it's first of all, it's a first year guy. Like Craig Counsell and Brian Snitker have both, been there, done that. Snitker was in his like 6th year with the Braves, 7th year with the Braves.
Yeah.
And Counsell was in his 9th. And I don't know. I think people are just going to be like, I mean, Snitker did win 104 games, but he also had the most talented lineup ever. And Counsell, I think, like, I don't know, I just don't see him like in a weak division where the only other competitive team just didn't show up. I don't think they'd give it to him. I think it's going to go to Skip Schumacher, which I'm fine with. It's like I said, it's a first year guy, and it's a team that people didn't think was going to go to the playoffs that went to the playoffs, even though they only won 84 games.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where I might go off on a little bit of a tangent here, because my pick, if I was a writer and I was given the pen and paper or whatever they do, I think it's all digital now, but I was given the account to
link.
I was given the link to do my Google Forms thing or whatever they do, to pick my manager of the year. My pick would have been David Bell of the Reds. I thought he was the best manager, and it makes me wonder, like, what are these people evaluating when evaluating manager of the year? Is it team success? Is it team improvement? Because if it's team success, then I guess Brian Snitker gets that. But me personally, I think the consensus would be the Braves didn't win 104 games because of Brian Snitker. They could have thrown in a lot of different managers and still won 100 games and won that division pretty easily. Whereas, and I think sometimes people look at like win total improvement as a sign of things, and sometimes that's not the most accurate. But if you're looking at win improvement, look at the Reds. They went from 61 wins last year to 82 wins this year. And I don't really care that they missed the playoffs. They still outdid expectations by a lot. I think there's an argument to be made that manager of the year can be looked at like MVP, where like a player who can lift a 70-win team to an 80-win team is just as valuable as lifting them from 85 wins to 95 wins and become a division winner. Whereas with manager of the year, making a 60-win team into an 80-win team is just as impressive as making an 80-win team into a 100-win team. It's that same difference. And if Bell was like on the Braves, maybe they'd even have more success. So with David Bell and his job with the Reds, I think it is so commendable. Even if they didn't make the playoffs, it was far, far above their expectation. Bell had 0 qualifying pitchers this year, 0 with 162 innings or more. He only had 1 pitcher with 120 plus innings this year. And the team was objectively in a worse spot entering 2023 versus entering 2022 when they won 61 games. They didn't have Castillo this year, Luis Castillo. They didn't have Tyler Mahle. They didn't have Brandon Drury, and they didn't have Tommy Pham. All those guys were on the 2022 team and not on the 2023 team. And they were consensus last place, consensus, like everyone was predicting them to be a last place team this year, but they ended up winning 82 games and, 2 more games and they're in the playoffs. And I don't think that should be the difference between him being a finalist and him not being a finalist. I think he should get that credit either way. And yeah, that's my rant on why David Bell should be manager of the year and why he should get more consideration, even though he didn't make the playoffs.
I'll keep going. I mean, like, what did the Reds do the second the lockout ended? They traded Eugenio Suarez. They traded Jesse Winker. They traded Sonny Gray. They got rid of a lot of their guys. They pretty much only kept Luis Castillo as soon as the lockout ended. That's going into 2022. What they do midway through 2022, they traded Luis Castillo. And going into 2023, they were kind of looking for an identity, and that identity became all of the youth that they had contributing this year. I mean, look at the entire infield, right? It was Spencer Steer, it was Matt McClain, it was Noelvi Marte late in the season, it was Christian Encarnacion Strand late in the season, it was Ellie De La Cruz, of course, for a while there. Like they brought in so many new faces that weren't just new to Cincinnati; they were new to Major League Baseball, and they contributed pretty immediately. And that's the reason they even got to that point where they were an 80-win team. Like if they're throwing out, if there's, it's possibly if they're still throwing out Eugenio Suarez and Jesse Winker, that it's just not the same team. Like it's a worse team objectively. Like the rebuild that we've seen has made them an objectively better team right now.
Yeah, there just wasn't any hope for the Reds coming into this year. They had a good farm system, but we didn't expect them to develop those guys until a couple of years later on. Whereas and
that's with Nick Lodolo getting injured for the entire season. It's with Graham Ashcraft getting injured late in the season, with Hunter Green spending time on the IL. Like all of the guys that we even liked at the beginning of the year didn't play the whole year.
Yeah, exactly. We entered this year thinking, we have Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo and maybe Graham Ashcraft to look forward to. Lodolo pitched, I don't know, like 30, 40 innings this year. Hunter Green pitched, I think, 112, 50 innings from qualifying. Like,
Andrew Abbott, we didn't even have on our radars. I forgot to mention him.
And with the farm system, like we mentioned some of the guys that came up, only like 2 of those guys were high profile when they came up. That's, Ellie De La Cruz and Noelvi Marte. Those were both, I think, top 20 prospects, Ellie De La Cruz being top 5. Whereas I think a lot of those guys were a little bit more under the radar, maybe not necessarily high profile, but they succeeded immediately. And, I think maybe a little bit of that can be attributed to David Bell and the culture he has with the Reds. And, this is why the award is stupid. We don't know what is attributed to the manager. But the fact that they won 21 more games last year with what we expected to be a worse team, that I think that says measures, that says many things about this, about what the job that David Bell did. And I think he's more deserving than any of these finalists. Which is why I think
one thing that I'm very much looking forward to. I'm assuming Skip Schumacher is going to win it. I think of these finalists, he should win it, but it would be the second time that Don Mattingly's replacement immediately wins Manager of the Year.
Oh yeah,
Dave Roberts won it in 2016. So it'd be fun for the narrative of everywhere he goes. Once he leaves, they get immediately better.
Yeah, what was funny was when you mentioned like Bruce Bochy potentially winning because of him being Bruce Bochy. That was such a Don Mattingly thing in 2020.
There was also like the fact they lost their entire team to the pandemic for 25% of the year.
That's true, but I forget who I picked.
But they did have a losing record.
Yeah.
We picked someone. It might have been David Bell even.
Who
won the divisions? It was probably David Ross, because it was his first year and he won the division. In like when he wasn't really supposed to.
Yeah, I forget I forget who we thought should have won, but didn't. But they selected Don Mattingly. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it would be funny for the narrative, as you said, of everywhere he goes, the team gets better after.
Yeah.
But yeah, with Skip Schumacher, all due respect, if I were voting, I would have David Bell number one, but Skip Schumacher would be the runner up because I think he's done a very good job with the team in his first year. So anything more on manager of the year?
No more on manager of the year.
All right,
Just forever.
American League Cy Young is
Garrett Cole.
Garrett Cole. Yeah,
He did it.
he did it.
Garrett Cole has won his first Cy Young.
His second time in the
finalist
top
of his career.
His second finalist of his career.
It was probably the third, actually. Maybe fourth, fifth. I don't know.
He was a finalist in
2021 and 2019, maybe 2018. The Verlander and Snell and I don't know.
Kluber, I think.
Kluber. Yeah, it was Kluber.
But
yeah.
But yeah, Garrett Cole, he's our pick and prediction this year. He'll probably win fairly comfortably. May even win unanimously, just because when you lead in innings and ERA, it's just hard to lose.
Yeah.
It's hard to have much of a case against you. We saw that with Robbie Ray 2 years ago. Like, he didn't have the strongest case, but he led in innings and ERA, and he won pretty overwhelmingly in 2021. Garrett Cole, led in ERA, had a 3.17 FIP, which was also really good. And he had 24 more innings than Kevin Gausman, 25 more than Sonny Gray, who are the other two finalists. And yeah, best ERA and most innings pitched is pretty much an automatic recipe to win the Cy Young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, now the NL Cy Young, I think, is a little more interesting. Like, the results won't be, but I think our analysis will differ from the writers.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to hear what you have to say on the National League Cy Young.
Yeah, so the finalists are Blake Snell, Logan Webb, and Zach Gallen. Blake Snell is going to win this award. If I had a vote, I would give my vote to Logan, who pitched 36 more innings than Blake Snell this year in, I think, only one more start. Logan Webb made 33 starts. Blake Snell made 32 starts. And again, 36 more innings pitched. That is 4 full games more in just an actual 1 game more that Logan Webb pitched. And the way, like, the foolish Bailey metric is he got 108 more outs than because innings pitched is ultimately outs recorded. That's how you get innings pitched, is you get outs. I understand that Blake Snell had a ERA that was a full run higher, but he led. I mean, still in only 180 innings pitched, he led the major leagues in walks this year with 99. He got a lot of strikeouts. He got a lot of guys to chase on his outside stuff. He also just didn't throw a lot of strikes, but he happened to have been deceptive enough. Because of that, he didn't give up a lot of hits. And yeah, I mean, his run prevention was awesome this year. I'll give you that. But Logan Webb had, yes, an ERA full run higher. However, a 3.25 ERA is still excellent. He had a 6.26 strikeout to walk ratio. He gave up only 0.8 home runs per 9, the same as Blake Snell, actually. But I mean, those, like, that much more of a workload, I don't know, it means something to me, because he was still a very efficient pitcher. He had a better FIP than Blake Snell this year, despite his ERA being a full run higher. Yeah, I would go with Logan Webb. I know he's not going to win it, and I understand why he's not going to win it, but that's who I would go with.
Yeah, there's definitely, like, analytically a very solid argument for Logan Webb, especially given the fact that he threw 36 more innings and had a lower FIP and had a lower expected ERA to go with that. This using the StatCast metrics. I think the argument, if you're going solely on run prevention,
someone made like the Virgin versus Chad meme with Blake Snell being the Chad, and it was like 5 incredible innings.
Yeah. So,
which is, you know what, you're right. But yeah. I'll take 7 to 8 really solid innings instead of 5 incredible innings.
So So yeah, with Blake Snell, if you're looking solely at ERA and innings, and you're taking out we have to put our blinders on to the
Peripherals.
to the peripheral numbers, yes, the underlying numbers. I think it's definitely Blake Snell, because this is also a foolish Bailey metric, is you add the innings and the extra earned runs allowed. Logan Webb had 36 more innings, with the difference in earned runs allowed between them would give Webb an 8.25 ERA for those extra 36 innings, which is not productive. However, it's a little bit more
That's
layered
also
than that.
hypothetical, because those extra Blake Snell innings are just the 6th and 7th innings.
Well, yeah, I'm not putting it in a literal sense, or maybe I'm putting it in too literal a sense, but just like overall looking at it, not looking at what if Blake Snell pitched those 36 more innings. It's just those 36 innings had garnered, an 8.25 ERA or whatever, or it didn't literally garner that, but
No.
that's
I mean, I think the difference there, like I kind of just mentioned, is like, it's not like Logan Webb had more innings because Blake Snell missed a couple starts. They made virtually the same number of starts. Logan Webb went deeper into games, saved his bullpen a lot more. I mean, look at, like the Padres bullpen this year was a part of the reason they didn't miss the playoffs. And I'm not saying Blake Snell's, innings workload or lack thereof was the direct reason why the Padres missed the playoffs, but there's a difference. Like it means something to be able to go deep into games. And when you're going 5 every time virtually, I do think it takes away some of your value as a starting pitcher. If we're talking Cy Young race specifically.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I 100% agree with that. And yeah, I think that was a debate that was had. The first time that Blake Snell won the Cy Young was him versus Verlander. I think Verlander threw like 34 more innings.
But Blake Snell also had a 2.17 ERA plus that year. Like,
yeah,
like the run prevention was simply better back then, and it still is very good now, but it was very much in 2018.
So yeah, just clarifying on, just for the audience, what I mean by the 8.25 ERA and the extra 36 innings is Webb had 33 more earned runs allowed in 36 more innings, so that would make an 8.25 ERA in 36 innings is what I mean by that. But that goes away from the point, because evaluating this, you do have to look at peripheral numbers, because Blake Snell had a lot of luck on his side, just in general. And, I kind of went into what that luck looked like. And some of it I just had to look at the underlying numbers within the underlying numbers, because Snell's difference in ERA and FIP and ERA and expected ERA, a lot of that actually had to do with situational pitching. So with FIP and expected ERA, it accounts for, players having league average timing. So having the same results with runners in scoring position as you do with the bases empty. And Blake Snell did not have those similar numbers. With Blake Snell, hitters hit 186 against him with the bases empty and 152 against him with runners in scoring position, and had a 617 OPS against him with the bases empty, as opposed to 470 OPS. A 470 OPS against him with runners in scoring position. And then you break that down and you think, okay, how much of that is luck? He had a 229 BABIP against with runners in scoring position. So you think, maybe there was some extra hard hit line drives that were caught when he had runners in scoring position. But just even his underlying numbers improved with runners in scoring position. Blake Snell's numbers did. He had a 5 mile per hour drop in average exit velocity from when he had no runners on to when he had runners in scoring position. And he had the 5th lowest exit velocity against with runners in scoring position out of 70 of this year. Also with runners in scoring position, his ground ball rate went from 43% to 54%. His sweet spot rate went from 37% to 31%. And he had the lowest expected slugging with runners in scoring position out of 70 this year. So he improved with runners in scoring position, which is something that FIP and expected ERA does not account for. That's one thing that I will talk about when talking about the flaws with those numbers. So I'm still picking, if I had the vote, I would still pick Blake Snell, which I'm not excited about because I didn't want to pick Blake Snell, but he is my pick, and he's obviously my prediction. I think he'll win it with at least 25 first place votes. But yeah, that's kind of my breakdown of it. Is I think with what the FIP and expected ERA doesn't tell us is he dramatically improved his pitching with runners in scoring position. Even though some of that can be a little bit arbitrary, but it did really help him in the run prevention aspect of it. It's why he had such a low ERA was because he dramatically improved his performance when the situation called for it. So that's all I got on National League Cy Young. Are we ready to go to?
Yeah, I do want to kind of go back on your point there. I get that, like, I think the easy thing to say with, the runners in scoring position stuff, it's like, yeah, he buckled down and he got the big outs. And that's valid. But I mean, the thing for me is, like, he gave himself way too many opportunities to have to get those big outs, right? I mean, like, if you're a starting pitcher, like, getting the big outs is usually you putting yourselves in that situation. If you're a reliever, you might be having to clean someone else's mess, or you have to, try to keep inherited runners at bay. But Blake Snell, especially early in the year, and I know early in the year is not when he won the Cy Young, he won it late in the year, but every single time was like it was like the 2021 John Gant innings where he would be like, he would walk a couple guys, give up a hit, load the bases, and then find his way out of it. And he would do this repeatedly every single game. And like I said, yeah, he gets the big outs. He absolutely does, no doubt about that. But it's the fact that he creates so many situations for himself that he needs to get the big outs that I feel like Logan Webb just did not do to the same degree.
Yeah, and it all trails back to the run prevention aspect of it, and that's why I wanted to address it, because I wanted to address that specifically because I didn't want to go Blake Snell because
I think this is more just out of protest for a guy with that innings workload getting the Cy Young.
Yeah, and why I mention it and why it's a discussion is I didn't want to put Blake Snell because he had such a high difference in ERA and the peripheral numbers, but then I went into why the peripheral numbers were so off, and I determined, hey, there is a reason why he allowed, there is a reason why he had an ERA that was a full run better than Logan Webb's, or
exactly a full run.
Exactly a full run. So I kind of went into that and I determined, I think he was the better pitcher this year, but ultimately it doesn't matter because the BBWAA will overwhelmingly
vote for Snell. Yeah, 100%.
And a lot of that and none of that will be with the analysis that we had. It will just be looking at ERA.
It'll just be like, how many wins did he get? Maybe Logan Webb had more wins. Like, Snell went 14-9. That's not that good. Logan Webb went 11-13. Never mind, it's cooked. It's over. Wow, Logan Webb had a losing record this year.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
What was Corbin Burns' record when he won it? It was not
in 2021. Great. It probably was. I mean, like, people don't really look at wins in the BBWA the same way they used to. Thankfully, it used to just be whoever had the most wins won the Cy Young automatically every time. He went 11-5. I mean, yeah. Because
when we trash the writers, I do go back to the 2021 Cy Young voting, and I'm like, well, they were a little bit based there.
They were. I mean, like, a lot of. Well, here's the thing. Right? It's kind of the same situation we have here, where it's Corbin Burns in the place of Blake Snell and Logan Webb in the place of Zach Wheeler. And I was very much a Corbin Burns Cy Young guy back in 2021. And I think the difference here is just Corbin Burns had a generational FIP season. And I know that you're not really supposed to look at FIP for Cy Young, but I did, because he had a, what was it, like a 1.63 FIP that year?
Yes.
Yeah, he had a 1.63 FIP, the second best in the last decade.
Right. And along with that, like, I think you should look at, FIP for Cy Young, maybe not necessarily for like MVP.
Really, first of all, he made 5 less starts than Blake Snell. There were 4 less starts than Blake Snell did this year, but he did pitch 13 less innings. He only qualified by 5 innings.
Yeah. And a lot of people argued, that Zach Wheeler should have gotten more recognition because he, had a low ERA with much, much more outs. And I think our arguments were like, Corbin Burns should have actually had more outs. It's just he had some bad luck, with ground balls and whatnot,
He
and
did.
especially, batted balls with runners in scoring position where he should have gotten more outs and he should have prevented more runs. And that's why we picked him ultimately. It wasn't because of the innings ERA combination. It was because of the innings ERA, expected ERA, FIP combination compared to Zach Wheeler's. That's why we thought he should have won in 2021.
Look, yeah, we could. It's possible that we live the rest of our lives and never see a 1.63 FIP in a full season again.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with I think DeGrom would be like the guy to do it, but you don't know if he's going to be able to get a
You
full
got
season
the
out.
keyword is full season.
Yeah, keyword is full season. Because he Burns did not have the lowest FIP among pitchers with 90 plus innings pitched that year because DeGrom was having his own generational season and then
He did.
got injured. It sucked. It was
What was
so,
his
he was
ERA
doing
that
so
year?
well.
Wasn't it like 1.4 or something like that?
His ERA, Jacob, I think it was 108. If I'm correct in that respect.
Because he was the one that was actually like also getting the big outs. Like he was getting the luck, I should say, on the big outs. He had a 1.7 or he had a 1.08 ERA with a 1.24 FIP.
Exactly.
That's awesome. That's really cool that he did that.
It was so fun.
He has his strikeout to walk ratio since 2021. Not in a lot of innings, but it's overwhelmingly double digits.
Yeah, his strikeout.
I'm waiting for Baseball Reference to load it.
His strikeout minus walk rate since 2021 is like over 40%, whereas league average is 14%.
That's so sick.
Yeah, I really want to see him out on the mound. It sucks that he's injured all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so American League MVP, pretty easy.
Yeah, it's Marcus Semien. He did it.
Yes.
He played. You know why? It's because he played all of the games.
He played all of the games, and what's more valuable than that?
Yeah, I mean, look, you knew he was going to be out there every day.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's value.
Yeah. So the finalists.
This is why Whit Merrifield should have won MVP from like 2018 through 20.
Well, I disagree with the finalists personally. I think it should have been Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, and Yolis Garcia because they won the World Series. And what's more valuable than that?
Yeah.
And they would not have been better with Shohei Ohtani. He was on the losing team. They lost because of Shohei Ohtani. So breaking down, we're both picking Shohei Ohtani here, and he's gonna win it as well. I don't know if it's going to be unanimous. It should be unanimous.
I love how I didn't even say that, and you're just like, yeah, we're both picking Shohei Ohtani.
I mean, yeah, if
you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Did I even give Corey Seager a thought? No.
So breaking it down, Shohei Ohtani had 594 more batter pitcher interactions than Corey Seager. That's like a full season's worth of batter pitcher interactions.
Yep.
Also, Ohtani had a higher OPS plus by 14 points, and he also had a 3.14 ERA and 1.42 ERA plus in 132 innings pitched. We can talk all day about how the team success thing is really worthless because we know the Angels would probably be,
If Shohei Ohtani was on the Rangers, they would have clinched the division with a week to go.
That's correct. Yeah. If there was a straight up trade for between Shohei Ohtani and Corey Seager, and they were flip flopped, the Angels would win less games, and the Rangers would have won the division most likely. Yeah. That's the situation. That's the team success thing. Do we want to move on to National League MVP?
Yeah, this is definitely the more interesting one. I mean, I think it's interesting in the fact that there's a case to be made for multiple people, but I think the results are going to be overwhelmingly in favor of Ronald Acuna Jr. I think he gets between 20 to 25 first place votes. I think there are a few Mookies out there, but I think Ronald Acuna is going to run away with it.
I don't think it'll be unanimous, but yeah, I agree that Acuna will get at least 20 first place votes.
Yeah.
Maybe even 25. And I'll be honest, I get why, and I kind of apply that reasoning as well. Ronald Acuna Jr., he's my pick. I don't know if he's yours, but he's my pick. He had 25 more points of OPS than Mookie Betts, 5 more points of OPS plus, obviously 59 more stolen bases, 3 more extra bases taken. In terms of going first to third on a single or first to home on a double, that's an extra base taken. So he had 3 more of those. He had a higher stolen base percentage also. People will talk about his caught stealings, but he had a higher stolen base percentage than Mookie Betts, or stolen base success rate. He also had a 12% higher extra base taken rate and 1.8 more win probability added. I think, me personally, like Betts and Acuna are tied in F WAR. I think the debate, I think the race is less close than the wins above replacement would indicate, even in my own personal opinion. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the National League MVP.
Yeah, I also have Ronald Acuna Jr. winning it. It's pretty close. Yeah, I think, Acuna has a slight edge in offense. He has a strong advantage in base running, and Betts has the advantage in defense, but I don't think it's enough to outweigh the advantages that Acuna has elsewhere. I don't think there's anything much else to say about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think at the for our first half awards, I mentioned, like, if you lead in OPS and stolen bases, you're pretty much like automatic
Guaranteed.
MVP for
Yeah.
me, unless the defense is so detrimental.
Oh yeah,
That's not really the case with
unless you're
Ronald
Kyle
Acuna Jr.
Schwarber level defense.
Yeah, exactly.
Like even if you're a DH, I'd still vote for you, or a first baseman with bad defensive numbers.
Exactly.
It's less like, I mean, in a lot of cases, it's less detrimental to the actual team winning.
And with Mookie Betts, like, I think there would be a case if Mookie Betts was out there playing like he was defensively in 2017 and 2018, but Mookie Betts is not like a Gold Glove fielder anymore. I gotta check the metrics here, but his he had -4 outs above average this year. He, in terms of total fielding run value, he was at -3. So it's not like
But Chris, he was a finalist for Gold Glove.
Well, we know how that goes. So
in 2 different spots, at outfield and utility.
Yeah, well, we're looking at the eye test. That is more valuable than any number you could put out there. All right, so yeah, those are the BBWAA awards, but those are maybe the least fun awards we'll get into today, because we are closing out with our annual custom awards. I have the 3 same ones that I've had in 2021 and 2022.
I have the 3 same ones that I had in 2022 as well.
Yeah. You have some fun ones. I was really pleasantly surprised with what you brought to the table last year with the custom awards. What do you got for the first custom award?
I'm trying to find. There's stuff. Okay, so the first award that I have tonight is the Hershey Award, which is awarded to a player, usually not a guy you expect to be there, but a guy with a very high sweet spot rate, that had that kind of as a preliminary, premier part of their offense. So, like, for example, Freddie Freeman led in sweet spot rate this year, but Freddie Freeman for more than just his sweet spot rate. I'm talking guy who hit the ball in the right spot, and that's really kind of the extent of it. And the winner of the Hershey Award in 2023, following up Ryan De La Cruz last year, is Donovan Solano of the Minnesota Twins. Congratulations, Donovan Solano, a 43.1% sweet spot rate this year in 295 batted balls. That is 4th among all qualifiers this year. If you're wondering how many qualifiers there were, I'll get that to you once Baseball Savant loads. It is 258. So Donovan Solano, the 2nd annual award winner for the Hershey Award.
Yes, congratulations to Donovan Solano. He's been nicknamed Donnie Barrels, but we should change it to Donnie Sweet Spots, as he was one of the best at hitting the ball between 8 and 32 degrees. And we mentioned it ad nauseum, but when hitters hit it between 8 and 32 degrees, they hit around 600 and slug around 1100. So it is a good recipe for success, which is why we look at it with our calculators and whatnot. My first custom award that I'll get into, maybe the crowd favorite. It is the Snowballer of the Year. It is, the Snowballer of the Year is the opposite of that's the opposite of a fireballer. You think fireballers, you're thinking, Jordan Hicks, Aroldis Chapman, Jacob deGrom out there busting out crazy fastballs. With the Snowballer of the Year, we are looking at pitchers with who do the best with low velocity fastballs. And the 2021 winner was Adam Wainwright, who did very well with an average fastball of like 88, 89 miles per hour. The 2022 winner was Nestor Cortez, who had a 2.44 ERA, despite having a fastball velocity in the 10th percentile. And this year's Snowballer of the Year has been a Chris Custom Award winner before with the Powerballer of the Year. I'm talking about Marcus Stroman. Marcus
Free agent.
A free agent.
Why do you think he opted out of his deal?
Because he was doing great with low fastball velocity. While the league averaged 93.3 miles per hour on all fastballs in 2023, Marcus Stroman's average fastball was 91.3 miles per hour, and he threw fastballs 64% of the time, despite being 2 miles per hour below the league average fastball velocity. And on those fastballs, he allowed a 326 slugging against. And out of 119 pitchers with 1,000 plus fastballs thrown, Stroman had the lowest slugging against on fastballs, despite having an average fastball velocity 2 miles per hour below average. And the next best ranked pitcher with sub 92 mile per hour average fastball velocity was ranked 13th in slugging against on fastballs. So Marcus Stroman had garnered the best results in terms of slugging on fastballs, despite him having a well below average fastball velocity. And by fastballs, I mean four seamers, cutters, and sinkers. All of them were pretty slow for Marcus Stroman, but he was successful with them. Pretty good prototypical ground ball pitcher. Got good results. With those cutters, sinkers, and four seamers. Specifically the sinker. I think he throws the sinker like 46% of the time and got good results on them. So shout out to Marcus Stroman, the Snowballer of the Year. What do we got for the next custom award?
So for the next custom award, we got the Prince of Pop-Ups, which is given to a pitcher that had a very high pop-up rate throughout the year. And this year's winner is a very special winner because he didn't just have a good pop-up rate for this year. He had a good pop-up rate historically. The winner, following up Corey Abbott of the Prince of Pop-Ups, is Steven Wilson from the San Diego Padres. Steven Wilson had 27 pop-ups this year in 132 total batted balls. That is a 20.5% pop-up rate. And it is the fourth highest pop-up rate in the StatCast era, minimum 100 batted balls against total. He actually had the highest pop-up rate in 2023, minimum 50 batted balls, and he had 132. So he was truly dedicated to the craft. He did it better than anybody else, and he did it better than all but three people. It's in the StatCast era, and it's also the highest pop-up rate in the season with at least 100 batted balls since 2019. So congratulations to Steven Wilson on a tremendous season at getting the ball in the air.
Yes, congratulations to Steven Wilson, the 2023 Prince of Pop-Ups.
And in case you're wondering, by the way, that list of seasons in the StatCast era with at least 100 batted balls, that is 3,608 seasons deep. And he was number 4 on that list.
Not cherry picking whatsoever there.
No.
That is a long list. So now we move on to my second custom award, which is the Powerballer of the Year. And that doesn't have to do with any velocity. I know, we talk about like Powerballer, like that's a guy with a good power ball.
Sounds very strong.
Sounds very strong. with Powerball of the year, I'm referencing like the Powerball, like the lottery. Who had the best luck of 2023 out of, certain players with a certain amount of, playing time where they could really develop a lot of luck and a lot of lucky hits. And my Powerballer of the year is another free agent, one of the more high profile free agents, which I do not want my team to sniff at all. And that is Cody Bellinger, who out of 81 hitters with 400 plus batted balls this year had the second luckiest difference in batting average and expected batting average and WOBA and expected WOBA. He had the second luckiest difference in both. He was behind TJ Friedel, who is a notorious bunter and infield hit aficionado, and that does not benefit his expected stats, but because he is able to get out of the box so quickly, he's able to get more hits than he should be getting. That's why TJ Friedel gets them. Whereas Cody Bellinger, he doesn't really have that hitting style. He doesn't get out of the box particularly that quickly. So that's why I picked him as the Powerballer of the year. Cody Bellinger hit 309 on ground balls this year, which was 61 points above league average. And out of 125 hitters with 150 plus ground balls this season, Cody Bellinger had the 10th highest average on ground balls, despite having the 97th highest average exit velocity on them. Typically, if you're getting a ground ball hit, it's got to be hit pretty hard. But Cody Bellinger was not hitting his ground balls hard really at all. In fact, he hit 290 on non-hard hit ground balls, which is 117 points above league average on non-hard hit ground balls.
And that's the league average for 2023, right? Or is it total?
The league average on non-hard hit ground balls was 173.
But like in the year 2023 only,
yes,
right?
In the year
so that you can't even account for the shift there.
Yes. He had, for this year particularly, he was 117 points above league average on non-hard hit ground balls. And out of 97 hitters with 100 plus non-hard hit ground balls, Cody Bellinger had the second highest average on them. Along with that, there were 45 hitters to have 150 plus batted balls with exit velocities of 85 miles per hour or less. And Bellinger had the highest batting average on those batted balls, on those 85 mile per hour or less batted balls, and the second luckiest difference on batting average and expected batting average on them. He hit 314 on batted balls with exit velocities of 85 miles per hour or less, and the league batting average on those was 216. He hit 314, 98 points above that. So, Cody Bellinger, congratulations. You just won yourself the Powerballer of the year. You were the luckiest player in baseball.
Is this the first time a position player has gotten a Chris Gianta custom award? I feel like it's always been pitchers.
Yeah, it's easier for pitchers to do that or to have that because they have like the defense behind them.
Listen, Cody Bellinger better realize that's like a pitcher winning MVP.
Or actually, correction, Paul Goldschmidt won Powerballer of the year last year, and guess what? He regressed mightily this year, so it's a little bit of a forecaster. So
yeah,
sorry, Cody Bellinger, but that's why I don't want the Red Sox to be involved with him at all. He did improve. He improved his expected numbers. He improved his strikeout rate tremendously, but he was not as elite as his on the surface stats said he was, in my opinion. So, what is your next custom award?
My next custom award is the fan favorite in the clubhouse. It is the Mercy Award. I will not explain the contents of this award because if you don't know, it's better to find out while I'm explaining it. The last year's Mercy Award winner was Griffin Jacks, who put up an incredible, very specific 2022 season. And it was hard to follow up, but oh man, did somebody, a former How About That of mine, come through this year. The winner of the Mercy Award in 2023 is JT Chazwa of the Miami Marlins, who put up a 48.1% mercy rate. What do I mean by that? The mercy rate is the percent of pitches right down the middle that are not swung at all. They are watched, they are called strikes, maybe sometimes they're balls, probably not. But JT Chazwa threw 52 pitches in Game Day Zone 5 defined by StatCast, which means right down the middle, and 25 of them, 48.1%, were not swung at by the opposing hitters. That's a free called strike when he was asking for the pitch to get hit to the moon. So this was the highest rate in the majors, minimum 50 pitches in game day zone 5, which was 415 pitchers. But historically speaking, it's also the third highest rate in the StatCast era among the 3,238 seasons with at least 50 pitches in game day zone 5. And it is the highest rate we've seen since 2016. So JT Chajwa put up a legendary season of pitches down the middle being taken. And it was something to behold. If you know how to use the StatCast search tool, watch these highlights. They're unreal.
Yes, they're pretty electric, and I actually looked them up, and I'm gonna show the people a sneak peek. But
Yeah.
it's funny because last night I was thinking about the custom awards, and I was like, oh right, the Mercy Award. I'm excited for it, and
Yep.
I was about to look up what it was, and then I was like, no, I want to hear it from the source here,
Yeah.
and I don't want to.
Did you forget what it was, or do you not know who won it?
No, I wanted to look up the stats, but
Okay. Yeah, no, you gotta wait and see. But
yeah,
congratulations to JT Chajwa of the Marlins. Probably part of the reason they got to the playoffs in some way, in a very small way.
in a very minuscule way, probably. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, go over to the YouTube channel. We are about to watch some game day zone 5 pitches, middle pitches that are taken from with JT Chajwa.
This is my favorite start of Christmas season type movie.
I sidearm delivery.
I mean, look at that. It's right down the pipe.
I'm not seeing anything at all. You are sharing something else.
What the heck? My screen sharing was paused. It said my screen.
You were sharing like a notebook or something, like a digital notebook.
Okay.
There we go. That's the one.
All right, here we go. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, go to the YouTube channel. We are about to watch a couple examples of JT Chajwa having some middle pitches just being taken right here. So here's one of JT.
Slider and a changeup, all from a high sidearm delivery.
Bang.
Yep. And then we'll do one more.
There were some good hitters to look for here.
Right.
Some good movement. A good
Well,
sinker.
to be fair to Zach McKinstry there, that was a 3-0 pitch, but I don't think it was all. Let's take a look at one.
I wonder. It'd be very funny if all of these are just 3-0.
Yeah, some of these are 0-0. Some of these, they got a 2-1 pitch right here to Keeper. Yeah, I fooled him there on a slider.
Yeah.
All right. Well, shout out to JT Chajwa having the most mercy put upon him. People were not swinging at his middle pitches. Now on to the final custom award. Yeah, I believe that was your final custom award.
That was. I love going through the highlights of all the called strikes down the middle. It's like, it's like part of the okay, it's almost Christmas time feel for me.
Yes.
World Series ends, GM meetings happen, free agency begins, BBWA awards, going on Savant and watching called strikes down the middle.
Yeah. Seeing the hitters give the gift of not swinging at a middle pitch makes you want to give gifts during the holiday season.
It's crazy. Almost half the time he threw it down the middle, it was taken for a strike, assuming I do filter by called strikes and balls just in case. I'm assuming there's no balls.
Yeah.
Be.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe once a year you get the accidental ball down the middle that was that fooled the catcher. That was called a ball because the catcher got duped.
Right. So now on to my final custom award, and that is the short end award. The short end award is the opposite of the power baller of the year. It is the unluckiest player in baseball. And I am talking about one of the players who I thought who who played under who I thought should have been the National League Manager of the Year. And I'm talking about Hunter Green. He had some unfortunate luck this year. Out of 149 pitchers with 1,500 plus pitches thrown, Hunter Green had the unluckiest difference in WOBA and expected WOBA. And out of 100 pitchers with 2,000 plus pitches thrown, he had the unluckiest difference in batting average and expected batting average. Hitters had a 333 average against him on ground balls, which was 85 points above league average. And that was despite his average exit velocity on ground balls being 1.6 miles per hour below league average. So he had a much higher average on ground balls than league average, despite having a much lower than average exit velocity against on ground balls. And out of 179 pitchers with 100 plus grounders against them this year, Hunter Green had the fourth highest average exit, got to restart that. Out of 179 pitchers with 100 plus grounders against them this year, Green had the fourth highest average against on grounders, despite having the 147th highest average exit velocity on ground balls. And with runners in scoring position, it was worse. Hunter Green, hitters against Hunter Green with runners in scoring position were hitting 385 on ground balls, despite the league average on ground balls being 248. And out of 213 pitchers with 25 plus grounders with runners in scoring position, Green had the 14th highest average against on grounders. So, and overall in the year, he had a 342 BABIP as well, which is an indicator of bad luck there, which is unfortunate. And Fangraphs was down last night, so I couldn't get where he ranked in BABIP, but I imagine it was very, very high. So yeah, Hunter Green, congratulations. You have won the short end award. You were the unluckiest player in baseball in 2023, according to me. So yeah,
that's it. That's another season of ARR. I mean, it's another offseason starter of ARR, I should say. Yeah, it's gonna be an exciting offseason. Obviously Shohei Ohtani's free agency will is just the thing we've been talking about for forever, and I'm glad it's finally gonna be over. Unless he signs a 1-year prove-it deal with the Rockies, which he very much might do.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, hear me out. If Shohei Ohtani wants to sign a 1-year prove-it deal, we're better than Colorado.
Yeah, he's not going to be pitching.
Exactly. He doesn't have to pitch, and he can just completely maximize his offensive prowess for a year. And it's like, hey, I'm on the mound again next year. I just put up an 1,100 OPS.
Yeah.
I brought the Rockies from 59 wins or however many they had to 78.
Yeah.
Just my bat somehow.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for the Shohei sweepstakes. The whole Tommy John thing puts a whole nother wrench into the mix and makes it really, really interesting. But yeah, thank you everyone for joining the Above Replacement Radio Awards. It's been a pleasure. I always love doing, research and whatnot for this particular episode. It's always a fun time, no matter what time of the year we're doing hits and misses or our custom awards. It's always fun to do that stuff and have these discussions. So hopefully
2024 goes a little bit better with the players to watch, because this was just a very poor showing from both of us. I mean, 2022 is actually pretty good for both of us. My number 1 and 2 hits were Stephen Kwan and Nate Lowe, who both broke out. Who were yours again?
2022.
Yeah.
For my hit. Oh God, I forget.
Your number 1 hit.
I forget. I'm gonna have to. I'll look up on Google Drive my biggest flop, which was Brennan Davis, and then
mine was Carlos Hernandez, and that baseball savant input error.
Oh yeah, my best hit wasn't great. It was Logan Gilbert. I would say I was better with my hits this year, but I also had worse flops.
Yeah. You did have some good hits. Justin Steele was really solid.
Yeah, I
wish I didn't go with Hayden Wesneski, but oh well.
I was satisfied with my hits. However, yeah, I did have some real duds, as they say. So yeah, that shall do it for this installment of Above Replacement Radio. We hope you enjoyed this one. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens, Go to the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio. If you want to follow us on social media, follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gianta. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Kern, and follow the show Instagram at Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time, where we will be talking
free agent predictions,
and probably recapping who won these awards a little bit, even though there's not really much to talk about there. But we will see you then.
This conversation is over.